Hello everybody and welcome to our accounting equation number puzzle exercise video. So this video, the intent is to help you understand the accounting equation, to practice through some number puzzles to better understand it. So hopefully by now you've already heard about the accounting equation, you've already gone through a video covering that in more detail. But the point here is that the accounting equation must always remain in balance after every transaction. So what we mean by that is that the beginning imbalances must still be in balance. Our assets must equal the liabilities plus equity. Now again, we have multiple assets, multiple liabilities, and different components of equity, but they all have to remain in balance. Also, at the change level for a particular transaction that's increasing an asset, for example, they maybe increase a liability as well. That would remain in balance. Now, if the first two rules apply, then the third rule would follow suit. The ending balances of assets, liabilities, and equity must remain in balance. Now, again, I want to stress that the accounting equation is assets equals liabilities plus equity. If we know any two of those three, we can calculate the third. So let's take a look at some of this. If we were missing assets, if we just knew liabilities plus equity, 150,000 liabilities plus $200,000 equity, we know that assets would be the sum of these two. We can calculate that missing third piece. Now this same thing would work either for beginning balances or ending balances. If we were just given two of the three items, we can easily calculate the third. Now this first one is the easiest because we already have our equation on the right-hand side. We said that assets are liabilities plus equity, so just add liabilities plus equity, and there are the assets, $350,000. However, we can do the same thing if we're missing one of the other items on the right-hand side. Assets must equal liabilities plus equity, so if we know assets and we know equity but we don't know liabilities, we could basically restate this accounting equation by subtracting equity from both sides, basically. So we end up with assets minus equity equals liabilities. So assets of $350,000 minus equity of $200,000 gives us liabilities of $150,000. Now the good news is you can work that forward. Once you have what you think all the items are, you can go right back and simply add up the two on the right-hand side to make sure they do indeed equal $350,000. Now let's take a different version. Let's say we didn't know equity. The same thing applies, only now you're subtracting liabilities from both sides. Now you get assets minus liabilities equals equity. Assets $350,000 minus $150,000 of liabilities equals equity of $200,000. And again, you can work it forward once you've done that. So now let's talk about some changes. Let's say that we're looking at the beginning balances plus the changes plus the ending. Obviously, for down a particular column, if you know the beginning balance plus you knew either an increase or decrease to that item, it's very easy to calculate the ending balance. For example, assets. We had $350,000. We added $125,000. So our ending balance must be $475,000. We'll figure that out in just a bit. Liabilities. We had $150,000. We subtracted $100,000. So it's easy to calculate that the liabilities would still equal $50,000. Now the two pieces that are missing over here, we can't do that with equity because we don't know what the changes are. We don't know the ending balance. But as I said before, we can calculate from the change level a third item. If we know the other two, we can calculate the third item. So remember, assets, the total impact to assets must equal the total impact to liability plus equity together. So if we have a $125,000 increase to assets, we must have a $125,000 increase to the combination of liabilities plus equity. The problem is liabilities are already subtracting $100,000. If we need liabilities plus equity to be a positive $125,000 change, that means equity has to be $225,000 so that the two items will net out to $125,000. Now, once we've calculated that, it's pretty easy to work our way down, as we said before. But let's say we're missing a few other items. From equity, we're missing the beginning balance. From liabilities, we're missing the changes. And from assets, we're missing the ending balance. With something like this, there are a few ways to calculate it. And again, we're starting to get into the number puzzle scenario here. You can pick a number that you think is the easiest to calculate, work that one, and then a lot of times it'll open up the door for other items. Now this one's a pretty straightforward one though. For assets, that's probably the easiest because we're just working completely forward. $350,000 plus $125,000, that has to be $475,000. So we'll get that in just a bit. Liabilities. To get from $150,000 down to $50,000, we apparently have subtracted $100,000 out. That has to be the change. Equity, what we need to do there is work backwards. If we have $425,000 to begin with, and we've already added $225,000, we basically have to reverse that out. So we have to take the ending balance, we have to do the reverse of what the change was. So $425,000 minus $225,000, that'll give us $200,000. And sure enough, we've worked our way through these. Now, let's say we're missing a few more items here. Here we have, with assets, at first glance, it seems like how could we possibly calculate assets? We only know the change. We don't know the beginning or the ending balance. So without looking at something else, we can't do anything with that one right now. And let's look at liabilities. Well, gosh, how can we do that? We know the beginning balance, but we don't know the changes. We don't know the ending balance. We're stuck. So at first glance, we're stuck. Equity, fortunately, we have two of the three items. In fact, that's the one we worked last just a bit ago. So that's the easiest one to go with first. We take the $425,000 ending balance, reverse the change, in other words, subtract $225,000, and we'll get $200,000 for equity. Now with equity known, and we know liabilities, $200,000 for equity, $150,000 for liabilities, we can back into assets of $350,000. Now that we know we started with $350,000 assets, and we know we changed it by $125,000, we can get $475,000 for the ending balance. So now the one that's difficult here is liabilities. We have a beginning balance, but we don't know a change. We don't know an ending balance. The good news is we can easily calculate either of these two things separately. We talked about the changes before. If we have $125,000 of assets and we need to get liabilities and equity to $125,000, well, hey, equity's well above that. It's $225,000, so liabilities must be a negative number, negative $100,000. That's one way to do that. And you can calculate the ending liabilities in one of two ways. Work it down, or since we know the ending balance of assets, we calculated that a bit ago, it's $475,000, and we know that equity is $425,000, liabilities must be $50,000. So there are a few different ways to work that. Now, some number puzzles also expand equity into its various components. It might say, hey, you know capital, you know revenues, income, or revenues, expenses, and dividends, and maybe you know some of those changes, but not all of them. The same thing applies. You just have a little bit more detail with equity. You need to go through that in more detail. So hopefully this has helped to clarify the number puzzle, the accounting equation in general. We do have additional videos out there for the accounting equation itself. We have a practice exercise on the accounting equation, but this is just one more way to learn it. And here I just have a reminder slide on the various accounting videos I have available, various ways to search for them. Hopefully this has helped to clarify some of these topics. I hope everybody has a great day, and thank you for your time.